You have hands and arms and legs and a face with a nose and a mouth and eyes and ears, and you have hair and you have shoes and pants and a cool shirt, and all of those things are yours. No one's allowed to grab or hit them because they belong to you. And that goes the other way around too. All of your friends have arms and legs and hair and eyes and clothes, and you're not supposed to grab or hit any of those because those belong to your friends, right? Okay, now, what about your toys? Your toys belong to you, and other kids' toys belong to them. Now imagine this. I know you don't really like unicorns, but maybe you had a unicorn toy. And what if your friend Sarah had a superhero toy? You love superheroes, right? Well, maybe Sarah likes unicorns. So you both have something you don't really want and you wish you had the other toy. But then you get a great idea. You say, hey, wait a second, we could swap. You give Sarah the unicorn and Sarah gives you the superhero. Now Sarah gets the toy she wants and you get the toy you want, and everybody's happier. Nobody had to grab anything. Nobody had to hit anything. You both just agreed. Just like that, you both ended up with better toys. And that's how people get what they want without fighting. We call that trading. Once you get your lemonade stand set up out there, you'll need to pick an initial asking price. Then we'll see how people react. Some will walk up, see the price, and decide it's not worth it. Others won't hesitate at all. They'll just pay and take it. After a while, you'll start to notice a pattern. If too many people walk away, you might be asking for too much. If you sell out right away, you're not asking for enough. What you're really doing is learning from people's choices. Everyone who walks up is silently asking a question. If you set the price at $1, each person is asking themselves, do I prefer the dollar or the lemonade? And they don't all answer the same way. Some want the lemonade more, some want to keep their dollar. As Carl Menger explained, there isn't a built-in correct value for something. Different people rank things differently in their own minds, depending on their own situation. So the price you settle on isn't something you invent out of thin air, it's something you discover by paying attention. It's the point where enough people are willing to trade with you that it works. And just like when you were a kid trading your toys and cards, no one is forced. Every time someone buys, it's because they decided it was worth it to them. And if no one trades with you, then the money you spent on lemons and sugar and the stand, that's on you. That's what taking a risk in business is all about. Remember when you set up that lemonade stand with your own money? You had to decide what to charge, whether it was worth your time and how much effort to put in. And you dealt with the results either way. If people didn't buy, that was on you, not on the consumer or the taxpayer. If things went well, it was because you made good decisions. Now, think about what would have happened if those decisions weren't yours. What if some office somewhere, some group of people made those decisions instead? Not just for your stand, but for every business, including what gets made, how much it costs, and who's allowed to do what. The problem isn't just that they might make mistakes, it's that they're not in the same position you were. They're not the ones putting in work, risking their own money, or dealing directly with the outcome. So they don't have the same reasons to get it right. You had to pay attention because if you didn't, it affected you. They're way more removed from all of that in their downtown offices. That's the idea people like James Buchanan focused on. The people making the rules have their own incentives. People may want to look fair. Maybe they want to avoid complaints, or they just want to stay in power. But those goals aren't the same as making things actually work. So when decisions get pulled away from individuals who actually take the risk and live with the results and are handed over to centralized control, you lose freedom and you lose that link between choice and consequence. And that link is what made everything work in the first place. The idea is people should be free to make their own choices with their own lives and property, as long as they're not hurting others, because they're the ones who understand their situation best, and they're the ones who have to live with the results. Across the entire economy, people are constantly making choices: what to buy, what to sell, what to produce, what to save, what to invest. Each of those decisions reflects how that person ranks their options at that moment, based on their own situation, their knowledge, and their priorities. None of that exists in one place. It's spread out, constantly changing, and often not even something people could truly fully explain if you ask them. And yet, out of all of those individual decisions, prices form. As Friedrich Hayek explained, prices act as a kind of communication system. They take all of that scattered local knowledge and condense it into signals that others can use. You don't need to know why something is becoming more scarce or more desired. You just see the price change and you adjust your behavior accordingly. The problem is that no central planner can access or fully process all of that underlying information. It's not just a question of computational power. More computation doesn't help. The issue is that the knowledge itself is decentralized and often tacit and constantly evolving. When you try to override or correct prices from the outside, you're breaking the system because you're cutting into that very process that allows it to coordinate itself. Now, here's where another problem comes in. When a policy is introduced, people usually focus on the most obvious effect. If the government spends money on something, you can see the jobs it creates or the project getting built. That's the visible part. But as Frederick Bastiat points out, that's only half the story. The money used for that project came from somewhere, from taxes, borrowing, or inflation. That means those resources are no longer available for something else. The business that didn't expand, the jobs that didn't get created, the goods that were never produced, those are the unseen effects. Once you start looking at both sides, you realize that policies don't just create outcomes, they redirect resources. And because those unseen effects are harder to notice, it's easy to think something worked when in reality it just shifted activity around, often less efficiently than before. When we look at how market interventions actually play out, we see the same pattern. A policy is usually introduced to fix a perceived problem, maybe to stabilize prices or protect an industry, or make something more affordable. And at first, things do seem to change, at least on the surface. But over time, the side effects start to appear, usually shortages or surpluses, misallocations caused by things not lining up the way they were supposed to. And instead of removing the original policy, the usual response is to adjust it or expand it or add new rules to deal with the problems it created. At the same time, the people and the industries most affected by these policies begin to adapt to them. They reorganize around the rules and eventually they start influencing the rules. What began as an attempt to correct the system turns into a system that reflects the interests of those operating inside it. That's how regulatory capture emerges. There is a gradual shift in who the system is actually serving, from the consumer to regulators and market incumbents. As more layers are added, the system becomes harder to step away from. Removing any one piece now disrupts everything built around it. So instead of rolling things back, control tends to expand further, trying to keep the whole structure working. This is how you end up with totalitarian societies. As Friedrich Hayek argued, attempts to centrally manage complex systems don't just fail quietly. Instead, they create pressure for more control. Because when voluntary choices don't produce the outcomes planners expect, the only remaining option is to push harder on those choices. That's the road to serfdom. Step by step, each intervention narrows the range of individual decision-making a little more, until maintaining the system depends less and less on cooperation and more on enforcement. Production doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds over time, through multiple stages: raw resources, intermediate goods, final products. Always remember, the structure of production has to be coordinated across time. Resources used today are meant to produce goods in the future, sometimes far in the future. That coordination depends on time preference, how much people value present goods compared to future goods. As Baum-Boverick developed, time preference is reflected in the rate of interest. When people are more willing to save, interest rates fall, signaling that resources can be directed into longer, more roundabout production processes. When they prefer present consumption, rates rise and production shifts towards shorter-term outputs. These interest rates aren't arbitrary. They're signals that help entrepreneurs decide how to allocate capital across time. They determine whether it makes sense to invest in long-term projects or stick with shorter-term production cycles. In this way, the capital structure of the economy stays aligned with consumer preferences. But when intervention distorts those signals, especially through credit expansion or artificially suppressed interest rates, that alignment breaks down. Entrepreneurs are misled into believing that more real savings exist than actually do. So they begin investing in longer-term, capital-intensive projects that appear profitable under those distorted signals. This creates what Mises identified as malinvestment, capital allocated in ways that cannot be sustained. The economy enters a boom phase where everything appears to be growing, but that growth is built on a mismatch between real resources and perceived signals. Eventually, that mismatch becomes unavoidable. Resources run short, projects can't be completed, and the structure of production has to readjust. That's the bust. Not a random failure, but the correction of earlier distortions. The longer the signals were distorted, the more severe the adjustment has to be.